Welcome back to another episode of the Transformation Leaders Podcast. I am Sean Ennis. I'm joined by my partner in crime, David Soden, and we have an excellent topic for today. So we talked in the past a little bit about what AI is doing to impact the job market, and I have talked about repeatedly on how many people are being negatively impacted by the rise of AI. And today's episode is about for those who have been impacted. David's done something pretty awesome to help those people. And David, can you take people through today about the Resume Tailor that you built?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the introduction, Sean. So let me get this up here on screen. So let me give a little bit of background here. So because everybody is getting impacted, I wanted to create a tool that's 100% free for everybody to use because Sean and I have lots of great skills. And, there's often that cliche saying that says just because you can doesn't mean you should. But in this case, just because we can, we absolutely should. So we want to put our all of our talk for the last almost 2 years now to practice, to work, bring it to kind of a little bit of fruition, and give back to those of you that have helped support the channel, as well as people that you know. So I really would appreciate it if you got the word out. It's not necessarily financially benefiting me by you sharing this information with others, but if somebody is in the unfortunate situation to where they have to go in and make or submit a resume, this tool will be really, really helpful for them. So it's available as a downloadable application that'll install on your Windows machine or 2 flavors of Mac. So for those of you that have Macs, you'll know more about this than anybody on Windows, but the newer, more powerful M series of chips that they put into the Mac and the legacy Intel-based ones. There's 2 flavors of Mac for that. And so you'll see this called Apple Silicon. That's the M4, M3, M2, all the way to, actually goes from M1 to M5. And if you have the legacy Mac before the M series, here's the Intel. Now, quick caveat, I don't have a legacy Mac to test on. I'm assuming this works, but if it doesn't, and you have an issue, you can go up here and click the links and send out a ticket, and I'll go ahead and fix that pretty quick. So you go ahead, you start off by downloading this or one of these applications here. And then when you get it downloaded, obviously I'm on a Windows PC, and I probably have too many things in my download folder already. So let me go ahead and get rid of those. Let's go ahead and download the Windows flavor variety. It's going and doing that there. I am going to do some quick house cleaning in the background to try to clean this up so that you have an experience. I'm going to go into my data folder, and this probably is a good point. Don't worry about how I'm digging into it. You don't have to do this, but I'm digging through here just so that I can do something to reset it. But it does provide an opportunity for me to show you all of this files here. All of your data and everything stays locally. So if you're using a local large language model, your data never leaves your machine. So that if you're super paranoid and don't want to give it to some corporation or some company, you can keep all of your personal information, all of your resumes, all of your contact details here on the machine by using something. So for example, I use this tool called Olama. And you can download Olama for free. I'll go ahead. I got a couple of links listed here. Let me go over to the page real quick. Let me go find a page. Here we go. And I don't want sign in. So let me get rid of that. All right. So you go to Olama, and then at that point, you can come over here, click on this black button. It's a download. And the same thing with them, except they include it with Linux. I don't know if anybody in the audience uses Linux. If you do, go ahead and shoot me an email and I can make a build for Linux. I just didn't think there's that many of you guys out there using it. But in any event, download Olama. And then when you get that downloaded, you'll get this application here. Now, one of the things that you'll need to do is you'll need to register an account. It's free with Olama. And what that enables you to do is to click on these cloud models. Now, you don't have to use this, but if you don't have a powerful machine, I've got an insane machine. I have 128 gigs of RAM on my PC. I have a 4090 NVIDIA GPU that has 24 gigs of RAM. So I do AI stuff. And I have an insane machine, and I think it's like an i9K something or other. It's got 32 cores in it. So this machine is super powerful. I could run it locally with no problem, but the average person's running 16 gigabytes of RAM, 500 gigs of hard drive space. Maybe if they're lucky, they get like, I don't know, 4 to 8 gigabytes of video RAM. And so it doesn't really work all that great. And so if you use Olama and then you run the cloud model here, it makes it free. Now, I will give you the caveat that everything I just said about nothing leaves your machine, that's where that becomes almost, not necessarily a lie, but a pipe dream, so to speak, because as soon as you enable out cloud, you are sending your data out over the wire, meaning anything in your resume, which is fine because you're putting it out anyway. I would assume that most people wouldn't care about this per se, because you're sending it out on these job boards, you're sending it out everywhere. And so this is in part, how you wind up on people's spam lists. So in any event, you'll need to flip this switch right here to enable cloud. You'll need to, flip this other switch down here that exposes it to the network. And that's what allows my application to talk to this large language model thing. Now, in the best of use case scenarios, if you have a decent machine, you can go ahead and try the smaller models. And then what I said earlier, with no data leaving the machine, is absolutely correct. Everything will stay and run locally. So there's a couple of options, but some of it will be dependent or limited based on what it is that you're doing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead here and I am going to set the database. You don't have to do any of this. I'm just doing it for the presentation. So I'm going to set this to old. And now I can go ahead and run the installer that I downloaded, that you saw that I downloaded earlier. I'll probably have to bring it off of my other screen. And here it is. I'm just going to install it just for me. I click next. It's fairly straightforward, pretty quick. Doesn't take too long. And then when it's down and finished installing, it gives you like a tick box, which is already checked that says run it. So just leave it as is, click finish. The first launch of the application is a little slow. It takes about 5 to maybe 10 seconds because it's setting everything up. And then the application launches and you're presented with this wizard. Now, this is trivial. You can change the color. You can go to light mode. You can go to dark mode. I leave it in dark. It's a personal preference. Do whatever you want. I'll just leave everything set up. Now, here's where you can choose. And, there's this little text down here. It says skip setup for now. If you skip this, you won't actually be able to do too much as far as generating resumes because it needs a large language model. And so if you have an account with OpenAI, this is where now things don't become 100% free to use the app. I don't make any money or benefit off of it, but you would pay OpenAI directly. You create an account, which is free. And then all you do is create an API key. And then you're charged based on your usage. So if you do this, what I would suggest, and I do have an API key here that I can demonstrate. Let me come over here because I don't want to expose my key and get this out here. I'll copy and
Now's a good time for me to mention you can install Olama, right? Yeah. You can install Llama on your local PC if it's strong enough, and you can do this locally.
Yep.
And I'm going to take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I'll show that here when we get going. Just a few minutes. Go ahead, Sean.
No, that was my point. Is it may take a little bit longer, but the end of the day, things come through.
I put my API key in here. Now, what this is going to do is going to go out to OpenAI, and it's going to ask, what models do I have available? Well, I let it have access to the kitchen sink. So I literally have the kitchen sink. I'm going to recommend and strongly recommend this model for one of several reasons. Number one is cost. This thing, you can generate, I don't know how many resumes, 2, 3-ish for about a penny. So you get and it gives really good results. So you just go ahead and set it like this. I'm going to hit the test. I always hit test. I highly suggest you hit test, because if it passes the test, it's going to work in the real world. So I'm going to hit save and continue. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set my eligibility. You see this on a lot of applications. I'm a U.S. citizen. Yes to W-2 eligible. No, I'm not going to sell my house and move for a job that's going to lay me off in 3 days. And I'm just going to leave the rest of this like that. And now I've got my setup finished. Now I wanted to go and show the Olama thing. So here back under settings, by clicking settings over here, I can add another provider. So I'm going to circle back and do that Olama local. Because I set it so that it exposes it to the network, that was one of those switches I showed you earlier, that means that this base URL is still good and working. Now, if I try to go from the list, I do have it here and it's available, so I can choose this model. Now, I've tested many models. This is the model that I'm recommending. You can use and test and play with whatever models you want. Again, anything that has the dash cloud means you're sending your data out to Olama, out over the wire. The benefit is you typically get access to a more powerful model because it's running on their machines and not your machine. If you see something like that I have down here, where I got DevStrill small, I wouldn't suggest it because that's more for dev development. It's not really good for this, although it is a local model. And if I did use it, no data would leave the wire. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this as well, because I know that this works. Again, test it. And so this works good as well. I'm going to click Add Provider. Now I have 2 different providers, and I have the ability to make one the default versus the other. It can only use one model at any given time, but you can switch back and forth if you so choose. And you can install multiple AI providers. As you saw, you can come back in here and change your button colors, your primary colors for both light mode and dark mode. Now, the other thing I told you didn't have to do, remember I told you about the data. If you want to go and back up, and I highly suggest you do back up, go into the data folder and you click that and it takes you wherever your data is on the machine, whether it's Windows or whether it's Mac. The other thing is, if you run into a problem and you're submitting a support ticket, please open the logs folder and copy all of these logs out and then send them over my way, and that'll help me help you fix any bugs that you may run across. Okay, what about usability? How do I use this thing? So you start off with the dashboard, kind of gives you a checklist of things to do. All you got to do is click Add Profile Content, and it walks you through the wizard. We've already done the identity and eligibility, so now we're on adding sources. Now, this is what this application does differently than any other application that I've seen that's out there. And I wanted to make it this way so that you get the biggest benefit, because as a user, as a human, when you're applying your information to whatever job you're applying to, I've been doing what I've been doing for over 30 years. So yeah, I'm a little bit old. And at the same time, I've collected a lot of resumes over the years. And so a lot of that historical data, that historical tasks, accomplishments aren't always germane or beneficial to, the job that you're applying for. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't be presented in a different way. And this is where a lot of us fall short, right? We're maybe not marketers. If you're in marketing, then obviously that's not true. But most of us that are applying for stuff, maybe we're not in marketing, or we haven't done a lot of marketing stuff. And so this is where it comes into play. You start uploading all of your resumes. So I'm going to go where I keep all of my stuff on Google. I'll go to Google Drive. I'll go to, I think it's under my resume, or maybe it's just resume. Yeah, resume stuff. I'll go into resume, and here I've got stuff from 2020. Here, I'll just click a couple of these. I'll include the PDF. Doesn't matter. Anyway, you load up all of these resumes and docs, and I'll just leave it there. So you upload everything that you have, certifications, your license. It does OCR, optical character recognition. So if you have a scanned PDF, it will try to read the text out of that, extract it, and add it. And so what it's doing, it's building a huge library, a corpus of knowledge about you and what it is that you do and how you've done what you've done. And it's taking all of that information and building this library. And this is why it's so powerful. Now, if I go ahead and click next, the next thing it's going to do is it's going to critique every single thing that you've uploaded as far as the sources. And it's going to try to look for holes or gaps or things that maybe an interviewer might lock into. And if you click generate questions, it's doing exactly that. It's saying, where are the holes? Where are the gaps? If I'm going to interview you based on the context of your resume, where or what am I going to ask you in an interview? And so it tries to preemptively knock that out and get it out of the way. And then any answer that you give here, it goes back into the corpus. It goes back into the knowledge information. So what this means is as you apply for more and more jobs, that knowledge, that body of knowledge in which it's the pool of information from which it's generating new and future resumes, it continues to grow because you can refine the resumes as you move through it. And once this is done, I'll show you about generating a resume. I'll just pick some random job that I'm going to pick or get out on LinkedIn, and then we'll go from there. And this is taking a exceedingly longer time than I had anticipated. So what I suspect I've done is I've set Olama as my source for this. And as a result, I now have my questions, but there's no answers. I'm going to quickly go into settings. And actually, that was OpenAI. So OpenAI may be getting hammered, which is probably typical. It's 11:28. That means West Coast is now just coming online. So yeah, this is quite normal. All right, so let me go back to the profile. Let's go into refined with AI, the questions. Now at Concentrix, how many low code, blah, 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 blah. Now I can go in and fill all of this information in, but what it can do is it can try to come up with an answer for you and draft it based on the information that's there. And it's going to do its best stab at filling in that gap. Now, I don't suggest you just click this and click save. That would be stupid and irresponsible at the same time. Read it. Make sure you understand it. It may be on point, 80%, go in and dial it in, or 60%, go in and dial it in. The point is, it's better to have something partially dialed in than to start with a blank canvas, which is where the rest of these are. Now, I'm going to do what I told you not to do, and I'm just going to quickly go through here, and I'm just going to put all of this information in here just so that I can get into the demo mode and get through this as quickly as possible. All right, so now I'm done. Oops, I just generated more questions. Dagnabbit. Okay, see how much faster that was? So, in any event, now what it's doing is it's building my profile. This is the corpus of information. This is the huge hopper. This is the resume that you should never submit. It's building a resume with all of the information. So if you were to send it in as this is, and some of you are unfortunately actually doing this, you're sending 16-page resumes into jobs thinking that more is better. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, before AI, there was the ATS, application tracking system. They're still here with a vengeance now because they're now empowered by AI. Before it was algorithmic logic that helped them scan and eliminate, which is why, before 2020, you may not ever have gotten any interviews from throwing resumes at the wall to see what stuck because the ATS had blocked you out. Humans have never seen it. And that's why relationships matter, so you can bypass the ATS. However, it's even worse today. You've got the ATS fighting against you with the power of AI, so it really has now scrutinized. And so this is what this application is designed to help you overcome. It's looking at all of the things that ATSs have, and it's looking for all of the loopholes and or issues to help you overcome it, or at least present you in the most positive way. It also has baked in ethical constraints, so it will not try to go over the line and lie and embellish to the point where it's going to put you in an uncomfortable situation. But ultimately, you're responsible for submitting your own resume. So whatever this generates, if you're not reading it and you submit it, that's on you. I highly suggest you not do that. Anyway, back to this. I've got a huge resume here that, again, you would never, ever have this many bullets, but this is power. This is power for what I can do. Look at all these skills that's in here. This is important because this is keywords. These are the keywords that you're going to run across. And, just because you have a keyword, there's synonyms to those keywords. And so you may not be able to correlate. I don't know how many were on screen, but maybe let's just say 150 are there. And there's synonyms to that you don't have the exact keyword. So guess what? Now you've dropped the point. You've dropped the rank. You've dropped the rank. And before you know it, if a human were to read it, you're fine because they can read inference. They can read intent. They can read all kinds of things. But this is how AI has come in to bolster the ATSs. And so let me show you now what this looks like when you're trying to apply for a job. This is the ethical dial that you have control of. Aggressive is going to push you right to the line and possibly over and allow it to hallucinate because it's not only going to look for synonyms, but it's going to try to market you in the best possible light. This is just going to use empirically kind of as it is. This is probably all of the competitors that are out there, what they're doing, and they're charging you money every month for it, and like vampires sucking money out of your wallet. The balanced is a balance between what was and like dialing it all the way up. So it is the default mode. So you can put in a company, you put in the role. If it's online, it can go and extrapolate it, or you can just paste it in. I'm going to show you LinkedIn, or try to show you LinkedIn. Let me go to personal. Somewhere in here, I have a link for LinkedIn, and then we go to jobs. I'm just going to pick the first job that comes up, head of AI International. Okay, so a couple things here I can do. It's called user testing. So I'm going to provide that here to user testing. I'm going to come over here to the title, which is head of AI. We'll paste that in here. And now about the job, I'm going to hit more. And I'm not going to copy about us. It won't matter, but I'm just going to try to grab all of the text to this. And I'm going to copy that. And now I'm going to paste it in here. So this is the job description as it is. Click generate resume. And now it's going to go off. It can take anywhere from 15 seconds all the way up to a minute and a half. So somewhere in the middle here, we'll dial this in. But while we're waiting for this to happen, Sean, can you talk a little bit about some of your experiences in submitting, resumes to the masses, and or have you subscribed to any services that do something similar to this?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you from a resume perspective, I've been hearing this for the past 2 years. People have been very, very disappointed in submitting resumes and like, hey, I'm putting in my cover letter, I'm doing this, I'm jumping through every single solitary hoop. And I'm like, look, you have to understand that AI is doing the majority of the work on this now. You are no longer writing your resume for your job. You need to write your resume for the AI gatekeeper before you could talk to a human. So, and they're like, well, how do I do that? I'm like, well, you need to write the most detailed resume you've ever had on Earth. You want basically a page per job that you've had, and go back to the days of Moses if need be, right? Whatever you have, for me, I believe that you should have basically a page for each job that you've ever had, a page for each role you've ever had, and then a page just based upon your skills. And if that's 15 pages, if that's 20 pages, that's fine. That's your corpus of information. I've been telling people all the time this. They're like, well, that's useless. I'm like, no, you write that in a markdown file, and then you add it as context to any kind of AI you have, provide the job posting and that as grounding, and then have it produce the output that you want. But here's the kicker. David, you made this point, and I want to put an exclamation point under this point that you made. Read it. Read it before you submit it, because yes, you may get through that first gate, but there is a second gate, which is a human. So it has doubled the complexity of people getting into to do a job interview. And for the most part, the jobs that I have been involved with have been a situation where it is somebody in my network. So LinkedIn is my friend, but as a good friend of mine has said, LinkedIn is the yellow pages now, right? So if you get through the AI phase, most likely the human will look at your resume and look at your LinkedIn page and see what you're saying. So, I also recommend people be active on LinkedIn. Make a couple posts a week about your thoughts and how you're a leader and how you are seeing things. Talk about mistakes of your past. Talk about the heights of your careers. There's plenty of things to talk about. And again, you can use AI to do that. So that's what I have been telling my friends and colleagues that are looking for jobs. And for the most part, the people who are getting the most amount of success are getting it from people in their network.
No, all great points. And actually, I've got a button in here that talks to something that you just talked or spoke about. Let me walk you through the analysis, because this entire demo is leading up to this page. And so this is super powerful. And this is what you need to do to understand. Now, I tried to make this as plain English as possible and color code things to help you visually dial in. Anything that's in green is good. I want you to focus on the less than loud, and most of you will probably miss this because there's so much information on this page. If you do not score at least a 7.5 or above, I highly suggest you not submit your resume, because you're not going to get through the ATS. You're not going to get through whatever. So bands of 7.5 plus are strong. If you get a 7.4 down to a 6.0, that's average. You don't want to be average in today's market. You'll never get an interview. Well, I should never say never, but I just did twice. And if you got weak, obviously this is a problem. And anything under 4.5, you're probably just not qualified, if I'm being completely honest. This tells you the good. This is where it aligned and you're strong. So for this particular job that I applied for, which I already forgot what it was, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll get to see what it is, which is here at the job description. Yeah, I forgot what it was. I think it was head of AI or something. And yeah, right here, head of internal AI. And this is where I aligned well. I got internal AI strategy, AI governance, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is where there's some real gaps. There's no mention, and notice how it says yet in your corpus. So this is where you can build this corpus of information. So this is only the first resume. Imagine doing this 50, 100 times, 300 times. I'm hearing from most of you, you've submitted in 1,000 resumes in as little as a month or 2 months or 3 months. If you use this tool to dial things in, first, you should never have to go with that many resumes ever again. But more importantly, each resume, you're going to dial it in. You're going to put something to this. Yes, hey, I served as this. And so let me look at something here. Board level, executive leadership. Like, these are things that are in my other resumes that I didn't upload, but because I didn't put them in there, it's not there. So one of the things that you can do is come up here to chat to refine, and you can have it dial in. So one of the things that's nice about this is you can look at this as you're typing to AI. Now, one of the things that I do is this is baked into every operating system. So depending on your keyboard, on Macintosh, you can set it up. On Windows, You use the Windows key, I think, in H, but look for the shortcuts and remember what they are. The point is your computer already baked into the operating system will translate your speech, your audio into text. So it's already there baked into the operating system. So I have a shortcut button on my keyboard. I have a special keyboard that I have that does this. So I'm just going to talk through this. And as I'm talking through it, I can scan and see what are other points that I need to make. And then what it'll do is it'll help me bolster through it. So I'm just going to either make up some stuff or use something real. I'm just going to pick something, large language models. Let's talk about that. I noticed that there was a hole for large language models. Well, I have dealt with everything from DeepSeek to OpenAI. I used Anthropic and Claude Code and all kinds of stuff through OpenRouter, which allows you access to a multitude of large language models. Now, large language models cover a wide degree of things, but more importantly, there's specialty models for embedding. There are specialty models for vision. However, there are an all-in-one model that allows you to simply do everything with all one or all with one model, and those are called a mixture of experts type of large language model. In any event, I've used these at a multitude of the companies that I've worked for, so I have extensive experience in LLMS. Oh, shoot. I hope I didn't lose all that, and I did. I hit escape to get out of the audio.
Yeah, I mean, the point I hope everybody is getting from this is this allows you some power that you didn't have before, right? So this gives you the opportunity to update your resume and fit the gaps so that your resume is going to match as closely as possible. Now, obviously, we'll never tell you to lie, but you can go through and say, oh, yeah, I forgot that, or I need to beef up that side of my resume. And when you do, you can add this back into the grounding so that you only have to do it once. But the intention is you go and spend a good amount of time customizing your resume and your cover letter every time you submit for a job. And this will allow you to get through the gates that AI is setting up to you. And highly recommend this for everybody to download this, give it a try, and please comment on your results. Because I know somebody who has used this prior to this meeting, this podcast, and they have told me that they got callbacks. And they were one of the people that told me repeatedly that they just can't seem to get a callback. So heavily recommend everybody give this a try. More importantly, provide a comment. You know, tell us if something isn't working. The goal of this, in my mind, and I don't want to talk for David, is there's a lot of people out there in pain. And they are, through no fault of their own, have been put in this situation. I have seen people posting on LinkedIn saying that they're 18-year software developer and they're working at McDonald's, right? You know, it is not because your lack of skills. It is not because your lack of hardworking ability. It is the situation that we're in. I talked about it, I believe it was last week on the Digital Rust Belt. What you are lacking is the tools you need to separate yourself from AI. And this is a tool for you that David has made. And I highly recommend everybody in the job search market to leverage this because it lowers the bar. For people like me and David, we know how to do this without, this tool. But for you, you may need this kind of help.
That's absolutely correct. And one of the things that I want to give everybody is this URL so that you can go to the website and get it downloaded. I've got two more things to show you, and then we can wrap it up. As Sean was talking, I should have gotten here when I was showing you something earlier, but I accidentally clicked out. So I don't know if you were seeing that as Sean was mentioning different things, but I put in a very terse version of what I had originally said. And then it came back and asked me, where was this experience relevant? Which companies did this apply to? And I just said all companies, just to get it to do something. So here's what it does. This is the proposed addition. So it will throw this into the corpus and it will put it into the resume after I've gone ahead and will now need to regenerate the resume. And I have a choice again, whether or not how I want to dial it in. And at that point, I'm good to go. Now I can click the download button to download the resume and rename it at the same time. And just to kind of show you what that looks like in Word, when it opens up, it's a very unstylized resume. It's clean, but it's got about 2.25 pages. Again, I got 30 years of experience here. So you can now have an opportunity to change or dial this in any way you want. So that's how it downloads. The other thing it gives you is some applications want you to provide plain text. So you can copy this plain text right here. And this is all of this plain text. This is a ATS plain view, application tracking system. You can do that. You can also edit your resume, which is in Markdown. So you can do that there. There's certain places that might be applicable. And then you have the job description. Now I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to do an aggressive one. Let that run because a couple of things. I want you to see how the score might change. And the other thing I want to show you is that there's some version control. And if you swap between large language models, like I showed you to configure multiple, you can play with it and see which resume text writer or model, large language model, does a better job than the other one. And you can contrast and compare and then just stick to the one that you like. The free one might be better. The one that costs more might be better. So you can see that it kind of bolstered this a little bit more. So I went from an 8.5 up to a 9.1 by using the risky one. Now, the other thing I want to show you here is under applications. This is important because, first of all, the company called User Testing is here, and I have the head of AI. Now, I can track my status of this application. Let's just say I submit it to LinkedIn and I've applied. I've got it there. The other thing that it shows you is that there's version control. So I can go to any particular version that I have and I can deal with it. So I'm going to mark this as the one that I submitted. I submitted version 3, and then I can archive the older ones if I don't want to deal with it anymore. But the point is, it keeps track of every company, every role or title that I apply for that, and every version of the resume that I generate. And you can archive stuff. You have 2 tabs, archived and active, and that's all here. The other thing, if you are paying for it and or you're a geek and are just interested, you can come over to the analytics page and it will let you know how many calls to the API you've made, how many tokens that you've spent or used in total by how many you've sent to the large language model and how many you've received. This will help you gauge costs if you're paying for a large language model. And then this will tell you very granular and statistically, hey, what was the call? What was it? This one was an analysis, a rubric extraction. This one was writing. This one was you're chatting with it. This one, like full audibility, full history. So this is taking a lot of these best practices that I've been on a rampage talking about, that you've heard Sean also talk about, that we've used all of this and baked it into this free application so that you can see it. Now, this again is available online, so you can go ahead and download this at any point that you want. Again, it's available for both flavors of Mac and Windows. If you need a Linux version, reach out to us. And you can do that by visiting the Transformation Leaders podcast, which has links to both Sean and I. You can get us out there, send us IMs. You can also send us an email on Transformation Leaders podcast. There's a form at the bottom, and that goes to both of us. Sean, do you have anything else that you want to let folks know about, or kind of close us out?
Certainly. So I beat this horse to death, but here we go for another round. The world is changing. There are new tools. There are new techniques. There are new hoops to jump through. We're going to continue to try to help people get through those hoops as effectively as possible, so that high quality people can remain in the industry. That's my goal. That's why we have this podcast. And that's why I'm so happy that you have built this and shared this, David.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate it. Well, guys, we're here every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's all the time that we have for you today. Thank you for joining, and hope you guys get some benefit out of this tool. I really wish you all the best. And if you're in this most unfortunate situation, hope that you guys land a job soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.